Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Randy Zumwalt, and I did my leisure activity on high tea. What is high tea? According to the Oxford Dictionary, high tea is a meal eaten in the late afternoon or early evening, typically consisting of a cooked dish, bread and butter, and tea. High tea is prevalent in the United Kingdom, where a tea culture much greater than that of the United States exists. While both men and women partake in tea as a cultural experience, it has often been associated with women and more feminine qualities. Here's a little on the history of high tea. Tea was first cultivated and consumed in China 5,000 years ago. The commodity first reached England in the 17th century and was brought to America during the colonial era, according to Hunter. In the centuries since, a tea culture has flowered in the West, and particularly in Britain. Tea culture would come to be an integral aspect of British culture to such an extent that Fromer stated that tea helped to define English identity, character, and class values. As such, men in the past took part in high tea quite often. Here's a little on high tea today. High tea has retained its prominence up to the present day. According to the University of Arizona, the United Kingdom, where tea culture is alive and well, accounted for 6% of global tea consumption in 1998, despite making up a significantly smaller portion of the world's population. As such, it is clear that plenty of men, at least in Britain, continue to take part in tea culture up until the present day. Here are some of my theories regarding changes in participation, particularly regarding how the participation is perceived amongst genders in the United States and Britain. Based on my research, it seems to me that high tea is thought of as feminine in the United States, but not in Britain. After all, it is clear that men as well as women take part in British tea culture, given that it is such a universal theme there. I think that high tea is typically seen as feminine in the United States because we tend to view it from afar. Because most people here do not partake in tea culture on a regular basis themselves, they tend to only see the aspects of it relating to domesticity, which remains associated with femininity in the minds of many. Women and high tea. According to Smith, tea rooms became popular in the United States amongst women in the 19th century, who saw the establishments as good alternatives to the saloons where men were congregated. Thus, women's participation in high tea came to reflect what Henderson referred to as the Victorian ideal, where the ideal woman was supposed to be delicate. In addition, tea came to be associated with domestic culture, and thus women as well, since the home was traditionally thought of as the woman's domain. In regard to these sentiments, it has been said that during the Victorian period, women remained constrained within the domestic sphere, wielding teacups instead of pens, content with moral influence among their families rather than political influence among nations. Why I had not participated before? I feel that my inexperience with high tea comes from my culture rather than my gender. Neither of my parents are regular tea drinkers, and my family certainly never got together at the dining table to have tea. I cannot say that I've ever actively avoided high tea on account of being a man. However, I did grow up with the knowledge that tea parties were something feminine that girls tended to do, and perhaps that affected my decision subconsciously. Now I'd like to share some images from my high tea experience. To experience high tea, I met up with my friend Daniel and invited him to Zocalo Coffee House. That's me on the left and my friend Daniel on the right. Here is our table set. As you can see, we have a nice kettle on a wooden board and our two teacups with a muffin. Because of budget and time constraints, our meal had to be quite small. The tea was very tasty. We were both left wondering where the shop got it from. Here's us partaking in some fun conversation during high tea. We found high tea to be a very enjoyable social experience. One thing that struck me when eating the muffin and drinking the tea was the fantastic combination of flavors. Tea goes very well with pastries. My overall reflection is that this activity challenged me in that I was forced to try something new since I'm not a tea drinker. Moreover, I was somewhat apprehensive during our tea because I was unsure of the normal topics of conversation for individuals partaking in high tea. Given the often formal nature of high tea, I was worried if we were doing it correctly. Partaking in high tea made me realize that many of the leisure activities we tend to assign to genders are unnecessarily arbitrary. Women are typically associated with more passive activities, while men are usually associated with more active ones. The amount of enjoyment Daniel and I experienced during our high tea session made me feel that these notions do not truly make sense, and that perhaps leisure activities in general should not be based on gender. Would I participate in high tea again? Absolutely. Daniel and I had a fantastic time during our meeting for high tea. It is easy to get lost in fascinating conversation over a nice warm cup of quality tea, and high tea is most definitely something I am looking forward to exploring further. From here, I would very much like to try new styles and varieties of tea, and I would also like to experience high tea in a more traditional sense with a larger variety of foods. Here is my works cited page. And the end. Thank you very much for watching my presentation, and you have a wonderful day.